So in order for the user to register, the user will fill in the form with the registration information, clicks the button, and that will submit the registration and save everything in the database. So just like we had it before, we need the HTTP GET as well as HTTP POST actions. So let's create the HTTP GET one first. So let's create a public iActionResult, and I'll call this one register. And here we'll have nothing else other than returning the view, because all we need here is to return the view with the registration form that the user needs to fill in. That's all. We don't have to do anything else here. I'm just going to explicitly mark it as HTTP GET, even though, of course, if you don't provide this tag, then by default it would be HTTP GET. Now I'll create the HTTP POST action. And since it's an HTTP post, I will also use the attribute for validate anti-forgery token. Let's create the action. So this is going to be public iActionResult. I'll call it register. And in the registration, we need to pass in the object for registration. We have our models for that. We created the register model that has all the information that the user needs to fill in. So this is the object that needs to be passed into this registration. And that's the information that's going to be saved in the database. So we pass in our registration class. So I named it register, that's our class, and I'll call it register. So as it is usual, we will first validate the model state. So if the model state is valid, then we can proceed and register the user. Now currently we don't have any users in our database, so I'm going to create a condition that if there is no role for the admin, the first user that registers is going to be the admin. So this will by default be the admin user, and it will only run once. Once the admin role is created, this is gonna be skipped. So I'm going to use an if statement and see if not the role manager that role exists async, and let's make this one, let's say manager. That's gonna be our admin role. It could be just called admin or whatever you wanna call it, but I'll call it manager. And then dot result. So if the manager role is not existent yet, then we will create it. That's gonna be the user that is registering with this information. So we'll create a variable role, and this is gonna be a new object of the app identity role. We are creating a role. And the role name, so role.name, is going to be the manager. Then we will specify the description, so role.description equals, and let's say manager can perform CRUD operations. And now we can create the role. So we're going to create a variable, call it role result, and we are going to go to role manager, and then there's the method called create async, which will create this role. So we pass the role to it, and then dot result, which is the result of the creation, whether it succeeded or not. That's gonna be passed to the role result variable. So with the role created, this is gonna be the manager role. That's gonna run only the first time, because after the role exists, this is gonna be skipped. But of course, we want to create the user. So I'm going to create a variable called user, and this is gonna be a new app identity user. And I will here specify those properties that we need in order to create the user. So I'll do the user.username, and that comes from the register dot and username. Then we have the user.user email. Actually, it's just an email property, and that's coming from the register.email. Then we'll have the full name, so user.fullname equals register.fullname. And then we'll have the birth date for the registration as well. So that's the user.birthdate equals register.birthdate. So these are the properties, and now we can create them and create the user. So this is gonna be variable, I'll call it result. And we'll go to the user manager and then again create async and pass in the user. So we are passing the user, and the password is a string that's coming separately because we don't want to assign it to any of these variables because it's gonna be, of course, encrypted. So we're passing it from the model. So this is gonna be the register.password. And then we'll get the result and assign it to our result variable. So if everything is okay, so we can do if the result.succeeded, then we can add the user to the role, and we only have one role, so we'll add him to the manager, and then we will redirect the user to the sign-in page. So we'll do the user manager dot add to role async, and we are adding the user to the role, and like I said, we only have one role. We are adding the user to the manager role, so any user who registers is gonna be the manager. And it's an async, so we'll use the wait keyword as well. And after that, we are going to redirect to the sign in page. And sign in is gonna be the next action that we are going to create. So I'm going to do the return redirect to action, and we are redirecting to the sign in action that, like I said, we are going to create, and we can specify the controller, which is of course the security controller. We don't have to specify it because it's the same one that we are in. Now if the registration didn't succeed, so that's an else statement, then we'll add the error to the model state, and that's gonna be displayed in the view. So it will tell the user what's wrong. So model state dot add model error, and we are adding an error. The key is nothing, we don't need to have any key here. We'll simply have the message itself as invalid user details. And after this is still inside the if the model state is valid. So all of this is inside this if statement. And after that, we are going to do the return statement, and we're returning the view with the object. So that's the register. So if everything is okay, then we are going to redirect to the sign-in page. And if something was wrong, then we'll stay in the registration page and pass in the value that were passed inside this action. So basically we will have everything displayed in the view and let the user fix it. So this is our registration. Next, let's create actions for signing in.